This is the magicwordpodcast.com.
Hello, this is Scott Wells for the magicwordpodcast.com. Well, what a lovely ride this has been. And it is continuing to be. I don't mean to make that sound like it's past tense. I enjoy putting out these podcasts, and we are rapidly approaching number 750. Rapidly approaching it. Goodness, time seems to fly so quickly. I have been so busy. I, of course, just got back recently from performing at the Magic Castle. It's been lovely, and that was on the heels of the Winter Carnival of Magic. And there are so many more conventions that are going to be coming up in rapid succession here, and I'll be attending several of those. I think I'm attending about 9 different conventions here this year. My intent is to tell you about all those and report on them as I normally do at the convention. I appreciate you guys coming back each week and listening to those reports. I know that you cannot make many of the ones that I attend. You're going to other conventions that will be in your own countries or someplace that might be a little bit more accessible to where you live. I am just very fortunate and thankful to the Friends of the Magic Word, who are the ones who provide their financial support to the Magic Word. And with those funds, that helps to defray our expenses, some of which, of course, are those travel costs and everything associated with attending conventions, and, of course, registration and lodging, etc. It seems to mount up. So that's why I really appreciate their support. And if you are thinking about you supporting us and you've got some funds that you might be able to float our way, so this way I can continue to give you such good content week after week, I would greatly appreciate that. If you just go to the magicwordpodcast.com, you will see a little tab there will say how to become a friend of the Magic Word, and there's a short video that explains how to do that. Very easy, but basically if you can pledge from month to month, it's not even a weekly pledge, but just a monthly pledge, that you can go through patreon.com and provide us with some pledge, whether it's going to be $5, $10 or more, or $20, whatever that you could afford a month. Just think about it, sharing a cup of coffee with me once a month. I mean, if you're sitting at home and you're having a cup of coffee and I'm there also, it'd be kind of cool if you are one of the donors and thinking, well, you know, my $5 this month is going towards a cup of coffee, as if I'm sitting here with Scott having a cup. So I would appreciate that. Or you can make it just a one-time donation, and there are several who do that through PayPal. There is a place on the podcast page there as well that you can just click on and give a one-time donation. If I see you at Magic conventions, I certainly accept cash, and I'm so thankful to so many people who do from time to time give me donations and give me cash or some sort of even a gift card, which is helpful then as well. In fact, when I was recently at the Magic Castle, Hiram Norman, who is one of the Friends of the Magic Word, who has supported us for many years, saw me and gave me a Dunkin' Donuts card so I can get my fix whenever I get to the airport. As many of you know, as you're listening to my reports, how I do enjoy my Dunkin' Donut and a hot cup of black coffee to get me started from the airport in the morning to get on my magic carpet. Anyhow, thank you guys very much for providing that. And as I said, we have a lot of content. Each time I go to a convention, I have an opportunity to sit down with somebody different and talk about magic. And so I have a lot of conversations that are in the can, if you will, so that they're in queue because I have these daily reports that are coming out during the conventions that kind of get pushed back. So I have quite a few that are going to be coming up over the next coming months, not just reports, but also some of these conversations that I've had. I'd like to have these conversations to be rather generic or not time sensitive necessarily. So if somebody is wanting to talk about something that they're going to be performing someplace next week or whatever, by the time that it's released, the podcast is out of date and you would have already missed that. So we don't necessarily talk about things that are coming up or has a time-sensitive element to it. These are more conversations about things. And that is something also when I do travel. I get out to South Lake Tahoe on some regular basis every year or two, and when I do, there are a lot of magicians who are performing out there. One person who has been performing there the longest, Tony Clark has been doing things since the 90s, and a little at a time as he has gotten away from performing there himself on such a regular basis, he has been producing other shows and other magicians' shows. And in particular, he had gotten our guest today started, and that is Alex Ramon. Alex and I have been friends for a long time because I had first talked with him, oh goodness, a long time ago when the circus had come through town and he was the ringmaster. And that was, golly, I don't know how many decades ago it seems like. Boy, time flies, as I said. But he has been working here, there at the in Tahoe for since 2011, and not just as part of a variety act, but really more with a long-term contract and doing a whole 90-minute show where they love him so much they keep extending the contract. And so he has had what we'd call a residency at these particular hotels. And I say particular hotels, he has performed in every one of the casino hotels in South Lake Tahoe. South Lake Tahoe is a very unique city where it is on the state line of California and Nevada. So on the Nevada side, that's where they have the gambling with the casinos and the showrooms and everything. And then quite literally across the street is more where you have, I guess, hotels and restaurants, and it's a completely different vibe. I mean, when you cross the street, it changes significantly, materially, from one place to the other. It's a very interesting place. So if you haven't been to South Lake Tahoe, it's a wonderful vacation spot, and it's good for any time of the year, whether you like to camp or go fishing or play golf, or if you like to boat ride. It's a great place out there. If you just like sightseeing or you want to relax, see the pine trees and just the beauty you can. If you're a snow skier like I am, I just love snowing. Heavenly Valley is tremendous right there. And so there are a lot of things, a lot of snow sports to do, whether it's snowboarding, snowmobiling, or skiing. A lot of stuff to do out there, and good restaurants. It's high end to low end. It's great. And then, of course, you have the shows that are going on, and there's a lot of magic that happens in South Lake Tahoe, and we talk a little bit about that in this particular episode here. So, again, if you get a chance then to go out to South Lake Tahoe, you'll probably catch Alex at some point because he's been there for quite some time. And I say you might catch him because he's also been on a little bit of a tour. And he's going to talk about that a little bit here in this episode. We spoke, first of all, some years ago. That was almost a decade ago. And at that time, Alex had so much to say, we split it up into 2 episodes. Well, we're coming back to revisit because he has done so many more things since that in the last 10 years at his tender young age, and is continuing to do and to develop such a repertoire of magic, and also a following and a fan base. And he talks a lot about that here this week. And because we did have such a lengthy conversation, I've decided to split this up into 2 conversations or 2 episodes. So you'll have one this week and then one next week. One of the things that we kind of hint at this week, and we are going to be talking in more depth next week, is his thing he called cold shock, which was where he actually was in the lake itself, Lake Tahoe, during the wintertime, and how he had prepared for that, and what cold shock actually means, what that term actually means. But this week, leading up to that particular conversation, he talks a lot about what he's been doing during the COVID situation. And he was going to be doing 35 and 35, which was going to be 35 shows in 35 cities. And then that kind of got put on hold, but he was able to do that live on Zoom through streaming. And as a result of that it really kind of pushed him to be creative and to look for more material, because every show in his 30 in 30, he was doing different tricks every night, and people were just tuning in to see what's he going to do that's different here tonight. Anyhow, this is an inspirational episode. I think it's something that not only talks about how that he has what he, that is Alex Ramon, has accomplished, but also it's encouraging for other people, I think, to kind of learn from how he has grown and how he makes the best of it. I think it's interesting to note that although he didn't know anything about Zoom like many of us didn't at the time, but then quickly got up to speed to the point where he went from 0 to 100 fairly quickly. So he had one year that was over 6 figures that he made, and he talks about that then too. And so there's money to be made, and still that he does. But he's got another thing that he's working on that he's doing now, where he's starting to travel across the country, similar to the 35 and 35, in which it will be performing in people's homes, or it'll be anywhere from theaters to your garage. Anyhow, he will be getting into all of that as well. This is just a very fascinating episode, and as I said, we kind of split this in half, so there will be more next week in which he'll talk more in detail about his cold shock and what that means and all of that. Before I introduce him, I do want to point out one more thing, and that is during the course of our conversation, we were talking about a couple of books that he was recommending on how to build your fan base and how to interact with them. And those 2 books that he recommended are on the website for themagicwordpodcast.com. If you go there, you can click on those, and it will take you to your Amazon account to look at the information on that, and if you're interested, then you can order as well. And I do encourage you, if you cannot support us with your financial pledge or with a donation, you can help us whenever you purchase anything on Amazon. Again, if you can click on those books, if you buy those books, then a few pennies get floated our way from Amazon. If not that, then if there are other things you're looking at, then perhaps you buy something, then we will get something off of that then as well. If you're just shopping Amazon in general and getting ready to go there, I want to remind you of that graphic that we have on every page of the magicwordpodcast.com. Go to the bottom of the page, and there'll be a little graphic that'll say we are an affiliate of Amazon, and when you click on that, it will take you to your web page, or rather to your account, hopefully. I believe it's set up to do that. And whenever you buy something, again, we get just a little bit of love back from Amazon. So that's very helpful to us then as well, if you will do your Amazon shopping through the Magic Word Podcast. Well, I think that's enough for me right now, kind of telling you about how this all came about and kind of what's coming up then as well. So please welcome my guest this week, Mr. Alex Ramon, here on the Magic Word. As some of you might recall, many years ago, in fact, back in 2014, we had a 2-part episode with Alex Ramon. That was number, I believe, 136 and 137 episodes. And, of course, now we're well into the 700s. And so that was quite a while ago. And this young man at the time, who was, I believe, about 29, is now a little bit older and more mature. And he's got some more experience, I think, that warrants us going back and having a second conversation because of the things that have happened, including winning Foolis on Penn and Teller Foolis, as well as other kinds of things. He's still performing, but back then I highly recommend that you go back and listen to that 2-part episode, because that was back when he had just finished his run as a ringmaster with Zing Zang Zoom, and also was with Magic Fusion here in Las Vegas. We're actually then right now in Lake Tahoe in his theater, where he is performing regularly, performing nightly. But he has also, during COVID, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that he was doing during that lockdown period, in which at that point he was doing a thing called 35 and 35, in which he did 35 nights and 35 different shows, nice different tricks every night. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then whenever he had opened this theater back in 2021, he also did 37 and 37, in which he was doing 37 consecutive night shows in 37 different cities around the country, not just in one state or wherever. He was touring around, and he's got something like that coming up then again soon. So I just want to give you a little bit of background about what we're going to be talking about, as well as some of the business suggestions and marketing ideas and things that he has done to get him to where he is today that might be of benefit then to you as well. So enough of that introduction. Here we are with my good friend, Alex Ramon. Hey there, Alex. How are you, buddy?
You have a really good memory. I was like, you remember the episodes and that's impressive. So I'm already...
Yeah, I believe it's around January the 14th of 2014, I think was that.
That's a really good memory. You know what, though? Now that you say that, I kind of feel like that's right. I feel like, early January 2014.
Yeah.
Sounds about right to me. So.
And you were working at the time, it was Horizon, and of course now we are at Harvey's, and the name of this theater is called what again here?
It's the Harvey's Cabaret in South Lake Tahoe. Okay. I've performed and I've had residencies in Lake Tahoe the better part of the last decade. And from 7 nights a week to currently I'm doing 5 nights a week. I've had residencies in every casino here at the lake, four properties. And
you're Mr. Tahoe, aren't you?
It's what it's turning into be. You know, the move to Harvey's, I performed at Hard Rock for about 2 years. The past, I don't know, maybe a year, maybe almost a year ago, I was at Hard Rock for about 2 years. And then Harvey's called me up and they said, we'd like to move you to the Harvey's Cabaret, because they closed this theater, and this theater was closed for about 2 years. And that's the time I was at Hard Rock. And then summer of 2022, right before summer 2022, they asked me to come over to this cabaret theater. And there's a rich history in Lake Tahoe of magic. I mean, Lake Tahoe is just a really nice town for magic. It's always done well here, and the audiences love it. And
it's a good family destination spot in which it's a beautiful resort. Summer, winter, fall, winter, spring. There's something always to do. Tahoe, skiing and boating and hiking.
You cannot beat a Tahoe summer in any way. You can maybe come on par, but you can't beat a Tahoe summer. There's just so much here. But it's still a small town.
Yeah.
And so I've had residencies all over for the last decade, like I said, and now it brought us to Harvey's, where I'm here 5 nights a week. I have an open-ended run, and it's going great. It was a really nice move. It was a really nice partnership to move from Hard Rock to here at Harvey's, which is a Caesars property.
They're both Caesars property, so you kept under the same umbrella.
No, actually, Harrah's and Harvey's. So there's 4 properties in Lake Tahoe. Harrah's and Harvey's are sisters, are owned by the Caesars Entertainment.
I see.
Hard Rock was something different. And then Bally's. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I know those gone through different changes because
all the time.
They had Blue and of course Horizon, and Caesars was over there.
Caesars, So there's been a lot of. I would say Harrah's and Harvey's have been the only properties that have been pretty consistently the same.
So when did you first work at Lake Tahoe?
The story goes in summer of 2011, Tony Clark had, let me start by saying this. Tony Clark ran his show Fantasy at the Horizon in South Lake Tahoe for about 5 years in the late 90s.
Wow.
Then he closed it, and then he reopened and did some shows and produced some shows throughout the first decade of the 2000s. And then I got off tour with Ringling Brothers Circus, and I went to create my own show. And then summer of 2011, I had just been about 6 months off the circus. Tony had a show producing here which is now Bally's, and he had me come in and fill a spot. It wasn't contracted; it was filling in because somebody had to step out.
It was a variety. I mean, there were other magicians?
There was about 4 other magicians,
Okay.
And so I popped in. I did a week, I think, maybe 2 weeks with them, and I just kind of reconnected with Tony. I've known him since I was a teenager. Helped me. I did workshop with him with the Doves, and he's always been so supportive and a great friend, and I mean, amazing magician, just really smart. I can't say enough good things about Tony Clark. And so after that run, I saw him at Magic Live, in Vegas, I had told him, hey, I want to talk to you when we get to Magic Live. And he said, okay. Because we had lunch up here during that run and just saying, how you doing? What are you up to? And at Magic Live, I told Tony, I said, I want you to open my show. I want to open my show in Lake Tahoe, so put me in Lake Tahoe. Because I didn't know any other way to do it. I said, put me in Lake Tahoe. And Tony's like, okay, well, let's see. And Tony had always done, whenever he produced shows, he always had a variety of shows.
I remember like Gregory Wilson and some other people. It was like magic on TV kind of thing.
Yeah, TV magic stars. Joe Ward was in there. Greg Wilson, Chip Lowe. Yeah, so there was always maybe 4 performers. Eric Buss was up here. Right. Bryson Lang, Alexander Great. There's a lot of guys that have worked at Tahoe and that Tony produced the shows up here. But I didn't want to be in a variety show. I didn't want to be in a bunch of, with other magicians. I said, I want to do the show. And he asked, how long are you going to do? I said, well, I'll do the 90. He's like, you're going to do the whole 90? I said, I could do the whole 90. And so what ends up happening is he saw me do the Palace at the castle. I said, come in, see what I'm doing, see what I'm up to. Now that show's only 45, 50 minutes. And I was doing 2 spots, and Jim Steinmeier was doing 1 spot. So I ended up doing about 35 in that particular show. And once he saw it, he goes, okay, like, this is great. And he ended up putting me in Horizon, which was the same theater he was in. And I ran there 6 nights a week for 2.5 years. Very, very successful show. Cool. We were the #1 attraction in Lake Tahoe, inclusive of the mountain, of boating, of other shows, the casinos. We were
skiing, everything. You were
skiing,
number
everything.
one. Yeah,
we were the number one attraction on TripAdvisor and Yelp.
Now, was that when you first started to align with Jim Steinmeier and got to be friends with him? Because there are so many things in your show that are ideas. You guys have to be tight.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim Steinmeier and I first connected when I was probably a teenager in my late teens. He came and did a lecture in San Francisco at Misdirection's Magic Shop. I met him there. Joe Pond, yep.
Love that guy.
Yeah, he's the greatest. That's where I began. So I saw him there, and I chatted with him just for a second. He wouldn't really probably remember me there. But then at 20, I toured with Disney. And Feld Entertainment produced a show called Mickey's Magic Show, and that's when I worked with Jim and kind of really met with him and worked with him on a production show. And then after that, we did Ringling. And I would say Ringling Brothers, the demand that Ringling Brothers had on what we did, I mean, that's where my relationship and friendship grew with Jim.
In large scale, because Jim would usually do things like with Disney. He'd work with him, of course, on Broadway and other kinds of places with larger illusions, which had to be seen from stage.
So so Circus was so big. It was so massive. I mean, and I was 23. And so I was a pretty young guy to be in the position that I was in.
You had to be the youngest ringmaster that Ringling has had ever, probably since Barnum days.
Yeah, and so even Barnum was a lot older when he first began. So I mean that's where my relationship with Jim, kind of blossomed. And so after that, I got off the road and. It was fun. It was interesting because Ringling Brothers was a 2-year tour. And the first year I was just learning and just experiencing it and just going at it. And we got really close, Jim and I, because I talked to him a lot about what was going on. And then I remember in between the first and second year tour of the Ringling Brothers Circus, Jim had said, I think we should work together. And he said that to me. And I was like, yeah, that's why I've been wanting to ask you, how do I do this, And so he's like, well, I'll tell you what. Throughout the year, anything that you find interesting, let me know. So I would text him interesting artwork.
Okay.
I would text him cool buildings, clothes. I would text him, I really like this song. I like this. And he basically got to know who I was and my interests and what I liked. Over that year, and then we would talk and we'd communicate, and then he would say, "What magic? What illusions are you interested in?" And I would say, "Well, what about this one?" And I would just name certain things. And so by the end of my second year tour, he had a really good sense of who I was, my interests, and what I wanted to do. And when I got off the circus, I said, "I want to produce my own show," because that's all I knew. Because before Disney, because I toured 5 years straight. I did 3 years on Disney, straight into Ringling.
When you're saying on Disney, was that the cruise
Mickey's
ships?
Magic Show. No, Mickey's Magic Show. That was a touring production by Feld as well. I had 2 weeks off in between closing Disney and opening, or rather reporting for rehearsals for Ringling. So I had 2 weeks. So I went straight in.
Yeah.
And prior to that, I had only done libraries. So prior to Disney, I was a library magician, and I would do a dove act in libraries. I was also in a variety show in San Francisco on the weekends. So on Friday and Saturday nights, there was a variety show called Circus Cabaret. I was the dove act, and I was like, I made it. I'm doing my dove act in a variety show,
right?
On the weekends in San Francisco. I love it. And then during the week, I would do the libraries. And so then from Disney right into Ringling. So basically, after 5 years of touring in a production show, no one was calling me to book me. I wasn't gigging anymore because I had been gone for 5 years. Right. So the libraries, some librarians were still there and they'd book me or if I wanted to, but I was no longer in that market gigging. I would start from scratch, but yet I had all this experience performing these large illusions. So I went off to decided to create my own market. I decided to produce my own magic show, my own illusion show.
Right.
And Jim gave me some really great advice as well.
Which was,
if you create your own market, no one can take it from you.
Wow.
And so what I ended up doing is I kind of centered my whole ecosystem of how I structured my shows, my fan base, because I have super fans that come to see me every
You're big on social
time.
network.
Well, it's not that I have a big social media following, but the followers I have all have one-on-one experiences with me and know me.
Okay.
And so there's a great book called Blue Ocean Strategy that talks about this, and also Pat Flynn talks about 1,000 superfans. 1,000 superfans are better than 100,000 fans.
This rings a bell. I think we may have talked about this some time ago. So you've been living with that for a long time. I believe.
Yeah. No, like I said, this was 10 years ago that kind of shaped my career in the direction that I went. So that's what I knew. So I went to produce my own show. I didn't want to gig. I didn't want to be the entertainment at an event. Mm-hmm. Like most magicians and entertainers are gigging.
Correct.
They're the entertainment at the event.
Right.
I wanted to be the event.
Oh, that's a completely different way of looking at things.
And it's also a different product, because when you are the event and people are buying tickets to see you, they write reviews about me.
Yeah.
And if my reviews are bad, then no one's going to buy tickets. Mm-hmm. If you gig and with an agent or whatever it is, and someone doesn't like you, maybe it might cost you a little bit, maybe they won't book you again or whatever, but it doesn't actually ruin the product necessarily. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe for that particular agent, but it is a different thing. And there's many people who are great at gigging, and they're great at corporate events, but they are not a ticketed show. And if someone bought a ticket to their show, it would fall flat. Mm. And I say this with respect to other performers, because I know what I'm good at. Right. I can do corporate events, and I've gigged, but the best corporate events and gigs that I do are when Google does like a buyout, and they go, "We want your show in this theater." Like we did a Google event over here, and it was like, I was like, okay.
So it's not in conjunction with another event. They actually would go to a specific venue.
Theater to get me as an entertainer.
Right.
And so it wasn't like I was just on a ballroom doing magic, stand-up magic, which I have done. I very, very rarely do. I do a handful of those events.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Most of my career at this point now is ticket sales, and in conjunction with ticket sales is merchandise sales. So I kind of have two businesses running. It's a performance business, mostly based off of ticket sales, also based off of if I'm doing corporate events and gigging and some others, but that's a small piece, and then the retail business.
I think it's so brilliant also, the kind of things you do with the merch, and I do want to talk about this a little bit later. I want to, for example, the dog that you have with MJ having Doxy, of having pins that you're giving away. But if you want to give a donation that you can, and of course giving stickers and things that you do, because it's like gift magic. It's not necessarily you're giving something hoping to get it back, but people remember you. It's like, what a nice guy. He's giving that away.
Well, here's kind of it was interesting. I find this story kind of fascinating. In 2020 I did a bunch of virtual shows, right? And
we'll get to that.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
I did a bunch of virtual shows, and I did over 300 virtual shows in 2020. And I'm not, I don't mind saying that. I made easily over six figures in 2020 doing virtual shows.
Yeah, how many other magicians should say?
Easily.
Yeah.
And so now I worked my butt off
because
I was doing over 300 shows. Mm-hmm. So my typical summer schedule, I didn't stream on Mondays. So I would do 2 virtual shows on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I would do 4 on Saturday and 2 or 3 on Sunday. Okay. And I did that throughout the summer, and then maybe it cooled off once things happened.
And a cool thing about that was, as well, as I recall, is that they were free, but with donations there again. Isn't that right?
Yeah. Well, I never say free.
Oh, thank you.
I never say free. Free
at no cost.
Yeah, free is not in my vocabulary. I don't perform for free. Mm-hmm. I'll perform at no cost, but it doesn't mean that I'm not getting something out of it.
Yeah.
Free is cheap, and it's psychological. It's free. It's like. It's something cheap. Oh, this is free. There's no value to it.
Right. You can toss
what
it.
I do when I perform at no cost, people know this is valuable. And then, as opposed to going, I'm doing it for free, then they don't value your time. But if you're doing it at no cost, I said, it's no cost. Don't worry. I'll do it. No problem.
Yeah.
They go, oh, he's doing us a favor.
Yeah.
When you do something for free, it's not a favor. It's just there's no value to it. So I'll say a lot of times, and that's how actually some of the structure happened on my touring formula. But I did want to tell you this. What made me think of mentioning the virtual shows is I was doing virtual shows. This guy called me, and I asked him after I had done a virtual show for him and his family, and then I was doing this big. At the end of the year, 2020, I was doing this virtual show called Magic 10, and I had over 1,000 devices registered to watch all over the world, and they all registered. And we had when you have 1,000 devices registered, that's thousands of people watching, because most of the time it's 2 and 3 and 4 people watching on one device.
One device, right.
So there was thousands of people all over the world watching this particular show. And so what I ended up doing is I selected a few people that I'd done virtual shows for in the past, and I said, would you intro me? I'm going to give you an intro. I want to record you. And then it's
just a regular person.
A regular person. And so I text the guy, one of the guys. I text about maybe half a dozen people. And I text the person and I said, hey, do you have a second to chat? And he texts me back, like, I'm the magician that he booked, or he didn't book, but I did the virtual show for in the summer. So then he texts me back and he goes, yeah, well, anytime, call me. So we talk, and I go, hey man, how you doing? He goes, good. I go, well, look, I'm doing this show. I would love for you to invite your friends, the people who had a good time at the virtual show this summer. I'm doing this big show at the end of the year, streaming, but you have to register. So I would love for you to invite those same people and tell them to invite anybody else. I'm going to give you all the invitation. I'd love you to host me, and I'm going to record you doing intro. And he's like, oh my gosh, yeah, they'd love it, of course. Yeah. And so what I'm doing is I'm hacking people to become my apostles.
Wow.
And so what I'm doing is, as opposed to just saying, hey, come see my show, when I reach out them to directly and I said, hey, I want you to host my show. And they go, what does that mean?
That makes you a special person.
And that makes you special. I chose you.
Yes.
And so then what that does is it means that they are now tied to the success of the event, where they are going to want to invite people to watch.
Right.
That ensures my audience. Now, the interesting thing is, after we had this conversation, he said, hey, can I ask you a personal question? I said, yeah, sure, whatever. He said, after the virtual show, me and my wife, we've seen magicians, all for years. We love magic. And Copperfield had his kind of, thing, and Chris Angel has his thing with the goth and the whatever. And we just kept thinking about you, and we're like, well, what's Alex's thing? And I said, oh, you're asking my brand. And he goes, yeah, we couldn't put into words. He goes, yeah, what? I go, oh, you want to know my brand? And he goes, yeah. What's your brand? And I go, I'm talking to you on the phone.
Yeah, the personalization.
And he goes, I go, see, I'm not just a magician. I'm your friend that's a magician. And now the only magician you're ever going to talk about is me.
Because you're now friends with that guy.
Because I'm now friends.
That's right.
And so even now, if you notice in my show, when I pitch my tours, I say, text this number, right?
They're texting you a personal number.
Well,
yeah.
It goes to my device.
Yes, let's say
it's not my personal number, but it does go to my device. And so I tell them that, and I say, and I actually had this dilemma, because I was talking to my girlfriend about this, because we're scaling, and I have 10,000 people now that have just been a part of this. Yeah. That now it's scaling. It's hard to individually text all these people. But I don't want to lose that personal touch. So right now I have a different service that we're using. We're transferring services, and it's a big pain in the butt. But it was very important to me that I made sure that we didn't lose that touch, because when I pitch the number and I pitch the tours up on stage, I say, hey, text that number. I go, it's going to go to me. Tomorrow you'll get a text from me.
Right.
And that makes all the difference in the world.
It's one of the first things you do in the morning, I guess, after you kind of go through those texts.
Yeah, usually in the afternoon is kind of like the window.
You set time aside just for that kind of a thing.
Yeah,
well,
and I
really
have, and then people still text me all the time, and so it's it is a lot of work to keep up to date with it. But you know what? People scroll aimlessly on Facebook anyway.
Yeah,
so
true.
It's like the texts aren't really long paragraphs, but it's like, oh yeah, that sounds good. Okay, do this, do that. And so it's very, very
right.
But there's an exchange there, and people. I try to be very, very. I took, for better or for worse, I took off social media for almost all last year. Almost all last year. I think I posted 12 times last year, maybe 10, and. I just didn't. I was over it because I was doing all these other things. I was doing shows. I was texting people and all these things. I just off social media. So now I actually restarted. Relaunched my social medias and my YouTube channel, and we post every day. We shorts every day and reels every day. And when people respond, I respond right back to them.
But I think it's very important that you actually, the point you'd made a couple things, several things, but one is using no cost. And so I think if everybody thinks about that, there's an inherent thing, because when you use the word cost, there is a cost, but I'm giving it to you at no cost.
Right.
I just want to backtrack a little bit, so that way the people who are listening to this have that as a takeaway. That is a very positive thing that I think I want to emphasize.
That's crucial.
It's very crucial to know that it's no cost if you're going to be doing something, because that has to do like with charity events as well, saying, hey, this is, no, I don't do it free. Can you donate donate time. Well, donate time is a little bit different than as well. I think no cost. I really like that. The next thing that I think it's important to highlight, and I don't want people to gloss over, is where you were talking about the importance of friendship. People like to do business with friends.
Yes.
And that's the thing like with working with trade shows. Yes, it's a corporation you're working for. You're trying to pitch the product when you're trying to stop people on the trade show floor, but you have to be friends with the person who is hiring you in the marketing department or the president or whomever is going to be there. And also, if you're going to be doing corporate events, of being friends with the person who is the booking within that company, their secretary or whoever it is, a personal assistant or somebody. The point is that they will want to call you back because you're friends. That's how you get the repeat business all the time, because, again, friends like to do business with friends. So by you having that touch, and that's your brand, then think about that. I mean, that your brand should be something.
There's this old, I guess, philosophy that the entertainer and the star has to be, on another level, untouchable. Yeah. Don't see the star before the show, and this mystique around it. That is played, and no one buys it anymore. And the reason why no one buys it anymore is because you can tweet, at Bruno Mars. He's a bad example because he's not on the socials that much. But, you could tweet Ryan Reynolds, and he'll respond back. Who are you to think that, you're great, you're more famous or more popular than Kevin Durant, and then they respond to people? It's just silly. And so that's just my personal opinion. Is that you need to be accessible, and that's what people are paying for, and that's why people follow your socials, and that's why people watch your stories, and that's why people want to do business with you, and that's why I have. If you look at almost all my reviews on Ticketmaster and or Yelp right now, tons of them, I would say half of them, say, I've seen Alex 4 times. I saw him again. Update on the review. Just saw him again. Yeah. And when people leave, and I spend time with the meet and greets, and those meet and greets sometimes my meet and greets last over an hour. My show's 85 minutes, 90 minutes, and then the meet and greet might be another hour on top of it.
You spend a lot of individual time with them.
100%, absolutely. And the reason why is because those people who wait in line for it, who are seeing me for the first time, they're like, oh my gosh, this is taking forever, right? And then once they get up here, I'll talk to them. I'll ask them where they're from. Did they have a good show? I'm not going to rush them, push them off and rush them. And then the people who have seen me before wait in line, they know that they're having a conversation with me. And I think that happened when I was a kid. I was probably 15 years old. I went and saw a very popular, famous magician. And afterwards, I had a chance to meet the guy. And I was like, I had this magazine, the Magic magazine. I was waiting. I was waiting at the end of got the signature. I wanted to ask him a few questions, and he completely blew me off.
Brushed you off.
He completely blew me off. Yeah. I paid. I was 15 years old. 16. I was 16 years old. I remember. I went to. My parents didn't have a lot of money growing up, and I started performing, and I started making some money. So I bought my dad and I tickets. I paid for the trip to go to Las Vegas, to fly to Las Vegas. Yeah. We went to Caesar's Magical Empire. Yeah. We went, all the things. And I took my dad, and I was like, this is my favorite magician we're going to go see. Yeah. And I had his magazine. I've been talking about it, and he completely blew me off. And my dad was watching there as the guy walked away from me. He signed it, goes, great, thank you, and just walked off. And I just remember my dad said, did you ask him everything you wanted to ask? This is the trip. And I was embarrassed. Yeah. I can look at it now thinking oh my gosh, I was crushed because it's embarrassing for my father. But my father was very, very loving and caring, just saying, son, is the guy? Okay, good. He didn't go, my father didn't make a scene. He didn't say anything. And that, I was like, yeah, no, I was good. No, that was great. That's what I wanted. And of course I was crushed. And I remember thinking, I will never do that to someone. Never. And whenever I have a kid come out to the show, at the meet and greet, they say, they like magic. Right. Oh, I'm a magician. I'm learning magic tricks. I always ask, 100% of the time, do you have a magic trick to show me? Yeah. Because I remember as a kid, that's all I wanted. Right. I had a deck of cards just in case. Because as a kid, you have all these ideas and these fantasies that all of a sudden this famous magician, he's on stage, he's going to ask me to do this trick, and he's going to be amazing. And then maybe I'll be in the show. Yeah. You have all these, and so you want to embrace that encouragement. It's really encouragement. It's not even giving into a kid or lying to a kid and they have skills when they don't have it. It's just more like encouraging them to keep going. Right. And so, and many times they do. And this one kid came to see my show many times, and he just went to Tannen's Magic Camp and won the contest.
Wow, cool.
And was with Ozzy Wind.
Yeah.
And Ozzy was spending time with him. And this kid came to my show and got a big interest after watching me. And now he come back to my show just a couple months ago. And he's older now.
Yeah.
And like his chops, this kid is amazing.
He's going to be some.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Oh, I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
he's really, really great.
That's cool.
Evan Mims. His name is Evan Mims. So if you guys want to check him out, he won. I mean, it's incredible. But all that stuff fosters, and I think good magic is good for magic. And so you know there is no contest, there is no competition between guys. There's no if there's another magic show in town, that doesn't bother me.
Right.
Why? If they have a good time over there, they're going to come see me.
That's
and
right.
If they have a good time here, they're going to go see you.
That's right. It's good for everybody. Yeah.
Good magic is good magic.
That's right. A high tide, I guess, floats all boats. You know?
Yeah.
So I want to go to, again, the COVID situation, because those
Sure.
can go. I suggest people go back to our podcast I'd recommended earlier, the numbers 136 and 137, for more detail on what you talked about.
Sure.
I mean, but for those who are just hearing Alex for the first time, being brought up to date with that. So into COVID, you're doing the 35 by 35, or in 35, and every night it was a different tricks and different things that you were doing. But during that time, you were also planning for Cold Shock, and I want to really talk a little bit about that, because we had discussed that a little bit then yesterday, and I'd like to kind of hear you recount that story again about what Cold Shock is and what the plan was.
So you asking about 35 and 35, kind of the genesis of this was I came up with an idea. I'm going to give you the full story because it's a long podcast. I had a residency in Lake Tahoe, and I was doing shows 5 nights a week, and I had people all the time ask me if I did private events and if I gigged. And I was like, I really don't. Like I mentioned, I really don't. I'm up here as a resident. And I had this family said, we really have this event. We really want you to be part of it, and da-da-da. And I was like, you know what? I can do it. They couldn't afford me. So I said, don't worry. I'll just come and do it. I have a day off. I'm actually in the Bay. I'll just come and do it. And they go, we'll pay you. I go, it's okay. Don't worry. Yeah. I'll do it. No problem. And so I ended up doing it. I just said, yeah. And it was kind of fun. And they just were like, thank you so much. Oh, my gosh. I was like, yeah, of course. Oddly enough, that particular family now buys tickets to my shows all the time. So was it really free or no cost? No. I've made money off those people, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, so I had this idea that I was going to do these pop-up shows.
Okay.
And also the intention was I wanted to do close-up. I was working on a lot of stuff via Danny D'Ortiz, because although I do mostly stage magic, illusions, and manipulation and escapes and all the other things, I love close-up magic too. Like, that's what I do. So my hobby is like Danny D'Ortiz style, like, very semi-automatic and psychology and the forces and like all this stuff. It's really fun. I love it. Yeah. But I don't ever have a chance to do it. So I was like, well, what if I created this idea that I did the pop-up shows in people's homes? But like, you can't just, it seems so glamorous. I guess in Spain, people kind of are okay with someone sitting at a table doing card tricks for an hour. In the United States, it's not really the same thing. If they want to hire a magician, it's not really that.
No, it's cocktail strolling or something.
Yeah, it's strolling, it's close-up, and that's not the same thing.
Correct.
I didn't want to do strolling. Strolling, you always have to go up to somebody, oh, hi, how you? I'm the magician, whatever. Right. Where it was a theater. He sits down, and he presents, brings people up, and he does it. Anyways, so I was like, I want to do that. How do I do that? Well, I can't charge for this because I don't know what it is yet. Yeah. So I did it at no cost. And I was like, hey, pop up. I said, donate $250 to a charity. Show me you donated, and then I'll show up at your house. And 12 people max. And I'll be there for a minimum of 30 minutes. And so they said, okay. And so I would go to these people's houses. And I kind of did one and another one. And then I kind of made an announcement like, hey, if you guys are interested in these pop-up shows I'm doing, everybody was interested. Yeah. And so what that turned into was this concept for this house tour that I did. And so I came up with this idea, and I wanted to do 35 shows in 35 days in 35 different cities. The whole thing was scheduled April 1st through May 5th, 2020. And of course, in mid-March, everything shut down, and the whole tour was canceled within like 36 hours. Right. All of them. Yeah. And so I was like, oh. So I had like 2 weeks before April 1st, and I was like, okay, well, I have a month off, just like everybody else. Exactly. That's what you thought. But I also thought, no, my personal opinion is I thought it would take until 4th of July. I said, I bet 4th of July everything was going to go up. But that's still a couple months. So I was like, okay. And so I had a couple days off. I was like, great, cool. I'll just kind of hang and whatever. I have a month off. First time in my career that I had a month off. And so I got bored. I was just like, I'm not bored. I was like, I'm going to do it anyways. Well, how would I do it? I guess I could stream it. How do I stream? I've never even streamed anything. So like, then all of a sudden I put everything together and I decided
But you had some equipment already. You already had some video.
No.
You had nothing.
I had nothing.
Okay. No green screen, nothing.
I had nothing. I had my iMac, and my first stream ever was the webcam.
Built into the iMac.
Built into the iMac. And I was playing audio off iTunes, and like it wasn't a clean, because I didn't know how to share audio on Zoom yet.
Oh, so it didn't always work.
Yeah, well, it was just background noise.
Sure.
It didn't come through their speakers. It was just really weird.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of filtered it out as if like it was.
Everybody's feeling their way that time.
Yeah.
On,
And that was April 1st. But I made an announcement maybe a day or two before, said, hey guys, I'm supposed to be on tour 35. Obviously it's not going to happen, but instead I'm going to stream 35 shows in a row. Tune in every day. I'll do a different magic show. So day one, I'm like, hey, and there was like maybe
12 people.
Nah, I did actually not so bad. I think there was probably like, I don't remember, 40 or 60, somewhere in between there, maybe around 50 devices on my first stream ever. Mm-hmm. And I said,
and as you said before, each device might have 2 or 3 people watching.
Right.
As well,
Oh yeah.
Because they're families.
Totally. Mm-hmm. And so that was my first stream. I had about 50 devices, give or take. And I was like, hey, can you guys hear me and see me? Okay. And so that first day, I did stuff that I knew. I had card manipulation. I did torn restored paper. I don't remember what else I did, but I did just stuff that I knew.
Right.
And then the second day, and so then I'm like, all right, tune in tomorrow. And the fun thing was I said, hey, today's day one of 35. I was supposed to be in Palm Springs, but now I'm here. And then, hey, it's day 6. I'm supposed to be in Phoenix, and so
I'm in your living room instead.
Yeah, but instead, but the hook was every night I would do a different magic trick, and I would repeat a trick. And let me tell you, I got through the first week, and I was hurting. I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? Mm-hmm. I went through the first 7 days, and now think about it. These streams were around 45 minutes.
Wow.
So it wasn't like 20 minutes.
Show, yeah.
Yeah. No, it was like 45. I mean, it wasn't like 90 like here.
And are you interacting also with the audience?
Oh, yeah.
Sure, okay.
Yeah, so I'm spotlighting people. I'm doing color Monty, right? I'm like bringing everything out, right? Like, I mean, think about it. You know, for magicians.
Cut your short string.
Yeah, exactly. And so, so anyhow, the week 2 was the hardest week because I realized, oh my gosh, I have to map this out because not only can I not repeat tricks, but in magic, there's very similar plots.
That's true.
Right? You can't do a torn and restored card and then the next night do torn and restored paper,
right,
and the next night do torn and restored tissue.
Right.
You could do torn and restored, but you have to separate them by at least 3-4 days.
Yep.
Right? Matrix routines, coins across. Like there's a lot of similar plots.
Things, right.
Predictions. I mean, come on. How many predictions? Like, so that was hard. So in week 2, I really had to plot out all
what you're going to do, so you're not
over the
duplicating
next,
effects.
Yeah, exactly. It's 5 weeks, and so I had to figure out what I was going to do for the next 3 weeks. And so I was like, okay, I want to build. So on like day 32, 33, 34, I'll start doing illusions, and I'll stream from my backyard. So on day 34,
bigger.
I did my underwater escape. I set out my lights in my backyard. I put up a truss like in my backyard and lit it. And like, you know, my dad, I was like, Dad, you got to paint the cement instead of like concrete. We painted the concrete on the ground black. So we got black paint, so that way it was not just concrete. Yeah. So it looked like black. I mean, so it was. But the hardest part was I did it every day, and it was a different show every day. And I never repeated a trick. I did, by the end of the 35 nights, I did over 150 different routines. And I did from water escapes to, like I said, a torn and restored string. I did one night that was dedicated to Slidini. I did on May 4th, I did a Star Wars themed one. And then because people are tuning in, and remember, this is at the peak of it, and it grew and grew and grew. So we had people on the first night 50 devices, then it grew to 60, then 90, then 120, then 150, then 200 and 300 devices. And so it really grew over the year, over the month. Yeah. And it was just an amazing experience. And it was also really hard.
I didn't jump into later because I hadn't heard about it to begin with. And then someone would say, hey, you got to go check out
this
Alex.
Guy, this guy. Well, and then we won a national award on CBS. I won an award called the Sunny Award that was presented to me on national TV called for creativity during shelter in place. And they selected, I think, 5 or 6 people that were doing interesting things during that month.
Congratulations.
And it was an honor, and really what this did is it served me so well, because it felt like I had such a connection to these people, because it was a time that, and I have people that had come see my show and they'll say, we tuned into 35 and 35. You got us through this time.
Yeah.
And
sure.
It was something that they looked forward to. And the kids, because the kids weren't in school, they're like, is it time for the magic show? Is it time for the magic show? So every single
That's
night
cool.
you had a family that had something to do.
Right.
And and people were, during that month, they're saying, how can we support you, in the chat? And then I would stay on after the streams and I would say, I'd talk to them for a little bit. So what ends up happening is they said, how can we support you? How can we support you?
Yeah.
Do you have Venmo? Can we Zelle you? Can you, whatever. And I said, just keep watching. That's all I want. Just keep watching. And so then after the 35 nights, my typical morning was I'd get up at maybe 8 a.m. I'd walk MJ, and we usually go on long walks like 9 a.m., then eat breakfast. Then 10 a.m. I'm writing and rehearsing material that I wanted to do later on, because there are routines with sleight of hand that you have to practice and rehearse. I can't just do it the next day. So I'm like, I wanted to do Salt and Silver, Giovanni's routine.
Yep.
But I need to practice that.
Right.
I got to practice for a couple weeks. So I was like, I didn't do Salt and Silver till day 33 and was rehearsing on day 8.
Yes.
So I'd have to rehearse that every day.
Yeah.
So that way it's going in the show in 3 weeks, And so I would rehearse things and try and map things out and get things prepared. And then I would build a lot of the props if I needed to make props or do things. Because, a lot of magic today is designed for eye candy and the social medias. There's not a routine.
Correct.
A 1 minute or a highly visual magic trick that's 5 seconds does nothing for me. It does nothing for anyone except for videos.
Yeah.
And so I need a routine. I need a script. And there was 3 people that made, 3 magicians, 3 creators that made it possible for me to get through that month. Jim Steinmeier, hands down.
Yeah.
Conjuring Anthology, the best magic
stuff.
book in history.
Yeah.
That is the best magic book ever. I keep bugging him that he needs to make a second volume because of the genie issues. Joshua J. Joshua J. has plots and premises,
Interesting
stories that fill time.
Sure.
They're routines. They're not just a
fully fleshed out.
Yeah, and the other person, just because you need the volume of tricks, Jay Sankey.
Okay.
Those 3 guys.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I've had Jay Sankey stuff for years, and you look at this thing and you kind of go, "That's a cool trick. I would never do it, but that's a cool trick." I did them all.
Yeah.
I was like, Sankey, what's the next one? So
What
that
you
way,
got?
because it was a quick visual, it's a card trick, boom, 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 a different plot, interesting, a button. There's, the cards have the measles, all these weird things. And so it really fit. And at the end of it, I said, hey, I'm going to take a week off at the end of the 35 nights. I'm going to take a week off. I'm going to do my next stream on this Saturday. Please tune in. And they did. And in that week off, I figured out how I was going to do my streaming shows. And they tuned back in. I had hundreds and hundreds of devices tune in for that next Saturday night.
Yeah.
So I had a week off after 35 and 35. I was pretty tired. I was pretty exhausted.
I would imagine so.
Because that was my, my days were just filled prepping, whatever. And then we had to rehearse the cues and the music.
But because you had so much time invested, whenever you go cold turkey, it's like, I got to get, I'm jonesing here. I got to get something again.
Yeah. So then I started a new show, or the new stream. And I told everybody at the end of the stream, I said, hey, look, this is what I'm up to, you guys. I'm going to continue to do live streams every Saturday night. I'll do a different show every Saturday night. But if you guys think that you would enjoy me performing a virtual show for your family, click this link on my website and it says schedule, pick a date, and I'll stream for your family at no cost.
Whenever.
Yeah, I have a bunch of slots opened. And I just had it on my website, and it was just like a few, I think I opened up 40 slots. And I was like, okay. And it was just on Thursday nights and Friday nights and Saturday afternoon, and just a bunch throughout the summer. And so then my girlfriend at the time was in the UK, and she was like, oh, we should do one for my family. I go, yeah, just find one on that works, an afternoon, and it could be a Saturday afternoon here, but it'll be a Saturday night there.
Sure, right.
And so she was like, okay, that'll be fine. And I said, just click on the scheduling. And she goes, okay, how, where? I go, just click on schedule. And I'm cooking or whatever. And she's like in the kitchen. And she's like, where? And I go, it's on the site. You just click the thing and then dates will pop up and you just pick one. She goes, what months do you have them? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, just, they were all filled.
Really?
Within like 7 minutes, 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
So then I go, wait, what? And I looked and I checked my email.
Yeah.
I finished the stream. We go inside. Like, that was fun. I checked my email. Floods of emails of just scheduling.
That is so cool.
So then I was like, so I added more. Those were gone. 80. Added more. 150. Added more. And so it was just people that just wanted to schedule it.
Right.
And then, of course, as I did them, I'd say, hey, if you guys want to schedule for your own, you're watching this guy's hosting you and invited you. If you want to host me and schedule for your friends in their circles, click the link to schedule.
Right.
And then that lasted. I still do virtual shows. I have a virtual show coming up for Instacart. And Instacart, I don't know how many virtual shows I've done for them and made tens of thousands of dollars from Instacart over the last 3 years.
Well, I thought that was a pretty good place to stop this part of the episode. So again, we will extend this next week into episode 2, where we get into more detail about what he was alluding to. But I think this kind of wrapped up this portion of the episode to tell you a little bit about what he's been doing for the last few years and what's led him up to what he's doing now and what he's going to be doing. But next week, again, goes into a little bit more detail about his cold shock that we keep alluding to during this podcast episode. And so I know you want to come back and hear about what he's going to say about that, because the story is pretty phenomenal, as well as, of course, the gems of knowledge that he continues to drop as he continues to inspire us. So I'm going to leave it there, and also, again, want to remind you, if you're interested in perhaps perusing the couple of books that he had suggested, they are available not only in hard copy, but also in audiobook. If you want to download that and listen to it through Audible, you can do that through Amazon too. If you let's go to themagicwordpodcast.com for this week's episode, you will see that link towards the bottom. Just click on that. It'll take you to your Amazon account where you can look into the information on that. Also, I want to remind you, if you can do me one more favor, and that would be perhaps if you go to your podcast provider, that is, if you're using iTunes or Spotify or Google Play or whatever you're using, there has to be some way for you easily to go in and to give us a 5-star rating, as well as a nice comments of whatever that you could say about the podcast. It would certainly be appreciated, whatever you can say and do. If it's not a 5-star comments that you could make, then keep listening, and eventually I think you will you'll see what we're talking about, or go back into the archives and hear what all else that we have provided as far as content over the last decade plus. I'm sure that you can give us a 5-star review, and I would certainly appreciate that. So until next week, stay well, get booked, and remember, when life gets hard, don't be discouraged, be inspired. This is Scotty out.